Well, hello there. Look, I started the lava lamp early enough to get it going. By the way, if you ever like these videos I do on metaphysics and field theory, I greatly appreciate any donation, which is in the description below. If you don't like me saying that, I apologize. I do spend an enormous amount of time on live stream and answering a lot of emails, and I read every comment, and, you know, I'm a even-handed fair person, so I greatly appreciate anybody who has or anybody that is considering saying any donation to me at all. And I just want to say thank you if you ever have, and I greatly appreciate that. One question that keeps coming up all the time, I mean always, is the question about power and evil, and specifically demons. And by the way, before getting into this video, I posted some stuff on Instagram, and the link to my Instagram is below in the past couple days. And Elon Musk made a huge announcement proving what I was saying. It's really off the Richter scale, and I wish I could talk about it, but it's Elon Musk's latest tweet. I don't care if you like the guy or you can't stand the guy, but he knew he would be fact-checked, you know, up one side and down the other if he made a false claim, and he didn't make a false claim. And you know, the things that are actually going on in North Carolina and a few other places are confirmed, and this actually feeds right into the idea of power and evil and demons, and defining saying there's something true to be said, a lot to be true to be said, and people that actually use a word without knowing what it's referring to. People will endlessly talk about the golden ratio, and this is the most cited pictorial example of the golden ratio. You'll see on an image search, I mean, golden ratio, you'll see the Fibonacci sequence. You'll see this nautilus shell. It's like, look at that, it follows Fibonacci. So what does that mean, golden ratio? Well, it's beauty. It's like, well, that's true, but that doesn't define what the golden ratio is. So people like to use words without actually knowing what they're referring to. When people say power and demons are intrinsically linked, and I'd like to go into logically, rationally defining same. And people always ask that in the live stream. And I don't confuse connotation with denotation, and most people do. Well, we can make a simple reference to anything you find online. What's a demon? Well, the term demon is derived from the Greek word daemon, which means supernatural being or spirit. And it is, whether it be embodied or not embodied, it is supernatural. But when we say supernatural, we just mean metaphysical. Something that is a substrate engine, an engine of the soul that's actually driving something. That's either a drive towards inward power or a drive towards outward power. And unfortunately, we talk about materialism. Materialism leads to the quest for power and the quest to prop up something that can't be propped up, like an ignorant little child actually builds a sandcastle and then doesn't realize the high tide's going to take it out. And then I've seen this actually happen. This kid spent all this time, ages ago, was on the beach, and his parents were trying to console him because the sandcastle he spent so much time building was getting wiped out because the high tide was coming in. And of course, demons are inherently like that. Demons inherently also, too, feed on the one, i.e. the transcendent good. In our analogy of light and illumination, they feed off, not knowingly so, but they feed off the light. But they actually blaspheme, and that's a true metaphysical reference. I don't care if you use Greek, Latin, or ancient Pali, they blaspheme illumination. And you confuse illumination with light, and they'll actually talk about the ephemeral, transitory nature of illumination. Anyway, if you look up at demons, well, supernatural being of spirits, like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't say anything, but it's commonly been associated with, and of course this is connotation, Judeo-Christian, specifically Christian connotation, of an evil or a malevolent spirit. And something that is evil is something that is against natural order. And people, of course, only see evil deeds. People don't see other people's minds. Some people, however, do, but those people that can see other people's minds or spirit or taint of spirit are extremely few and far between. The term originally meant a spiritual being that influenced a person's character. And that is actually accurate. And we could make a long discussion about the ancient Greek word kekos, which, is translated as evil, but it means, that which is against nature, or that which is against natural order. So let's get to it without, doing the squared away dictionary definitions, which don't really tell you anything. You can look up, for example, like I was just referring to, the golden ratio, or the golden mean. You say, well, it's what's beautiful in nature. Well, that doesn't tell you what it is. It's a logos. I don't know if you know, like an old signet ring that would have a seal, like they did back in the day, like the king would sign something to know that this king really wrote it, instead of some sort of imposter. He'd stick his, drop some hot wax and stick a signet ring in there. And of course, there's always a very beautiful carving, and we're like, well, the king actually did that. He actually sealed it in there. And evil fundamentally is concerned with something that is not the logos, rather an imprint of the logos. I mean, I could take this beautiful cross-section of a nautilus shell and break it apart, and it's really very fragile, break it apart in an instant, and you say, look at that, it's a piece of garbage now. And evil fundamentally thinks the beauty is in the thing. And to think that there is beauty in this thing, which all forms of evil, I'm going to go down a short list, always does, is to destroy that which is inherently beautiful, that which follows natural order. I mean, there is no more beauty in that, and of course it is beautiful, but it is not in there to ignorantly think that there's a signal in the radio. There's no signal in the radio, nor is there beauty in that nautilus shell, there. But evil thinks that, and of course evil fundamentally, denotatively, and importantly so metaphysically, is ignorant. Unfortunately, the ancient Pali, Greek, and Sanskrit word for ignorance, whether it be avidya or agnosis, doesn't really mean ignorance. It's actually transcendent and ab extra to an embodied person. We can talk about ignorant individuals, which of course is correct, but it literally means illumination. Avidya, agnosis. This is the a prefixual before the word gnosis or vidya, and it just means illumination. Illumination is inherently pure and beautiful. It gives light to things, and without that light we can't acknowledge its beauty, but it is a modulation. And evil's fundamental, we actually have to look at it from the perspective of, like, and I have no respect for psychology, we have to look at it from the perspective of some sort of hyper-rational, intense psychologist who, other than acknowledging the evil that person A, B, C, or D is doing, we have to ask, why are they doing it? What is the motive that is impelling this ignorant action? We can actually have two different deeds, and this is very straightforward and illuminating, at least it should be to most of you, two identical evil things, i.e. deeds, and people only see actions and deeds. They say that by their actions shall you know them, and that's partially true, but it's fundamentally incorrect. We have two identical deeds, considered evil and awful, whatever those may be. One is done by an ignorant young person. Yeah? Oh my God, that's just terrible. Look at that. Oh, he doesn't know any better. He's just ignorant. Evil is not to do that which we inherently acknowledge as evil. Say we don't know who did it. Yeah? Two identical acts. We could show the same. Well, that's the same thing. The first time it was evil, and the second time it was evil. Yeah, but this one was done out of love of evil. It is knowing, willful deeds of evil. This one is done out of pure ignorance, fundamental primordial agnosis. And one of the reasons why I never discuss Gnosticism is it fundamentally thinks the transcendent absolute, i.e. the agathon, the beautiful, the divine, the one, is evil, and it makes the same fundamental mistake that a demon makes, and that it will actually see the evil done out of primordial ignorance by a young person who's done the exact same thing, an evil person, or whether it be a living person or a demon-possessed person or a never-embodied demon. Demons are of several different classes, has done. It's like, well, both of these are the same. Yeah, but this one is willfully done out of love of evil, and this one is done out of sheer ignorance. But people only see deeds. And this is a really important distinction. It is a spiritual vortex of evil that these beings, whether they be embodied or not, actually commit. How strong your will is of course extremely determinant of how open you are to either suggestion or possession. My friend and I visited a young, I'll never forget it, young, healthy person. Very healthy. Young, didn't do any sort of, didn't do anything. I don't want to say the words because they're always listening. Physically, if you a pure person, but he's like the old Chinese tale of the chicken that stuck his head in the lawnmower there. He dabbled where he shouldn't have, and he was possessed. By the way, the cold cathode effect, or the spiritual coldness, it's not physical coldness, that you feel around an evil person, you can actually feel it like a vortex, a spiritual vortex of evil. This is also, too, by the way, the answer to the videos I'd post using thermal cameras showing it's colder in the moonlight than it is in the shadows at night. Why is it colder in the moonlight? It's called cold cathode effect. Anyway, there's a cold aura around this kid. He dabbled in evil. I don't want to get into the story of what he dabbled in, but you could take a guess. And there was a cold orb that followed his whole body, and you could just see that he was not getting any sleep. It was dismantling him from the inside out and the outside inwards. So it was working at both ends at the same time, and he left this world, as we say, under mysterious circumstances, not of his own hand, but the demon actually took him out. I'll never forget that. But I've encountered demons before, and you have too. Some people, they really are clueless when they're actually around this. They can't sense it. I can sense it immediately. You don't even have to be very close to me. I always back away from these things. There's actually passages in the Majjhima Nikaya where Gautama backs away from this demon, and the demon says to Gautama, "What, are you afraid of me? Oh, look at you." Hero's like, "No, I just don't like." He even refers to his cold aura or presence, and it is this cold vortex effect of these beings that are actually, and they feed on the same one that you and I feed upon, but everything to them is inverted. And I'll go off the short list of the goals of demons. Most of them are actually not embodied, most of them, but they do love. And by the way, people that actually get possessed, they make themselves of a disturbed nature such that they become permeable. You should do a video on it. It's basically the metaphysics of spiritual permeability. Yeah. How permeable are you? I've got so-called superconductor sets in the basement, liquid nitrogen tanks. I used to do all sorts of mad scientist experiments, and you levitate liquid nitrogen chilled, yttrium, barium, copper oxide disk, and the magnet would levitate above it. That's not like superconductivity. It is near zero magnetic permeability when you actually chill down this disk. The reason why the magnet floats over top of it, you say superconductivity. So what do you mean by that? I don't know. It's superconductivity. It's near zero magnetic permeability. Yeah. In other words, the magnetic field can't permeate that ceramic disc. When it gets super chilled, it becomes super dielectric. And it's hyper-rational and hyper-logical, the spiritual permeability that all the people that become possessed, they either openly request it, they get bored and lonely, and they think they're going to have fun by, peering deep into the dark, and when they do that for long enough and hard enough, the dark peers back into them. And this is low spiritual permeability, and these demons, rightfully so, think they're going to have a free roller coaster ride in the two-legged Joe, Billy, Bob, Sue, whoever it is. Like, it is going to be fun. They open themselves up. They're emotionally disturbed. They seek it out. You don't get a pious, low spiritual permeability person that gets possessed. There's a reason for that. True metaphysics is hyper-rational and hyper-logical. What they are is they're feeding off this bottomless fire, not that this is a real fire, that constantly must be fed. They feed off the same energy that you and I feed off of, but there's a reason why they try to wreak havoc. They're kind of like the surfer that goes out. I used to skydive every day with these surfers. They hated it when the ocean was really calm because they had their surfboard. Like, bummer, brah! There's no waves to ride. They spend all day skydiving and try to surf all evening. Great life for them, right? But they hated it when there's no waves out there to ride. You know, to make a humorous analogy, the demons love it when you are spiritually disturbed and the waves are churned up and they are hanging tin and having a good time riding off your disturbances, your angst. You can, if you're perceptive at all, you can feel yourself spiritually drained when you get extremely disturbed. I mean, it's just 100% undeniable. So, but they are feeding off the bottomless pit that must be fed. People that seek after power and demons seek after it. I mean, if you think you're ever going to heap up power and try to, and this of course is where materialism gets into play here. There's two types of power. There's true power, which can be fulfilled, which is inward power, and there's outward power, which is like this fire here. You got to keep heaping logs on it to keep it fed. You know, there's no stopping it. You know, I got several wood fireplaces up at my cabins, and you got to keep feeding them. And evil is the same way because it feeds off the same thing, and it can never be fulfilled. It's always looking for your disturbance, your angst, your spiritual permeability. It's kind of like there's this old video of Laurel and Hardy, and there's these giant vats of, I forget what sort of liquid refreshment, high octane liquid refreshment. You know, one of the kegs has got a hole in it, and it's, you know, leaking out this stream, and, you know, they're sitting there, you know, consuming the high octane liquid refreshment. And demons are the same way. I mean, if you're a sealed up, dry barrel that is basically zero spiritual permeability, you know, they want nothing to do with you. They will try to pick a hole in you, and if they succeed, all the better for them, and all the worse for you. I'm trying to make simple analogies here. All of this is actually hyper-rational. In their own ignorance, and I'm not defending this evil and this power-mad, lust that they have, is that they can't stand matter, and they think beauty is in the object. But the beauty of the logos is not the object. It's not in the object any more than there's a signal in the radio, but they fundamentally operate. Well, it's like, well, no, they're against natural order. We know they're fundamentally ignorant, but what drives them? They point out the obvious without actually seeing the substrate. It's like someone looking at an ugly house. It's like, well, this is ugly. It's got termites, and it's nasty and dirty. And it's like, well, that's true, but you've ignored the fundamentally pure thing that it's built upon, the impression thereof upon which it stands, and that would be the foundation of the substrate, the essence, like the signal. I've had some of the best, most expensive radios, ham radios, for example, that money can buy. The finest, the best antennas. Well, without the signal, it's just a hunk of electronic garbage. This, by the way, is not one of them. This is a cheap radio. Talk about like Yaesus and ICOMs here. The finest. Like, who cares? It's a piece of garbage without the signal. And they're interested in the beauty and the destruction thereof and the material thing that they will point out, and this is the ignorance that power-mad and the demon-possessed or demons themselves, and most of them are not actually embodied at all. They love to be embodied, though. It's like getting a free roller coaster ride for them. If they can find somebody, you know, that they could, ride the roller coaster with, you know, i.e. the meat suit, they love that. That one guy with the cold orb around him that stuck his head proverbially in the old lawnmower there, that's what happened to him, and that's what took him out. I've ran into a few people like that. More than a few people that were actually possessed. Anyway, they actually think the beauty is in the matter, or it's in the object, and of course it's not. Ultimately, evil, of course, like I said, feeds off of the one. Some demons have never been embodied, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it's extremely high. Most have been embodied at one point in time or another. Most, if we actually take a snapshot currently, most of them are not embodied. They're not possessing anybody. However, that's getting worse and worse. People think that you can actually appease evil or retrain it, and this is not true. You know, like, well, I'm gonna fix that person. You can't. It either gets destroyed or you let it self-destruct and let it run its course, you know, because it is always against natural order. the actual true metaphysics of kekos, or the Greek word for evil, is fundamentally, you can say, well, it's evil, it's bad morality. You read all this Christian gobbledygook as far as what that means in the dictionary lookup of that term, but what it means is that which is against natural order. Timothy, I'm going to do a Bible quote here now, Timothy 6:10. People always misquote this one, by the way. It says, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." To pierce yourself through with many sorrows is no different than what I referred to as spiritual permeability. It is not money, which is a piece of paper and technically cotton. It's evil. I mean, that stuff in your wallet is not evil. It's the love of. True evil and that which defines a demon is not, because you can have an innocent, ignorant young person do the same deed as a demon. The demon knows what it's doing, and it is in love with it. The love of money pierces the soul. It's not the money itself. Money is the root of all evil. It's like, you know, if we're going to quote the Bible, why don't you get the passage right there? It says love of money, i.e. to be in love. There's a question asked of this young child who became famous as the Vision of Lourdes in France. He's asked by the priest, and he said, what is evil? You know, a child will say, well, to do something evil. And the child had a response that even impressed the great theologian and said, no, evil is the love of doing evil, not the evil deed or act itself. People see acts and hands and deeds, but they don't actually see the mind or the soul. Unless one is a true rare visionary, you can't read people's minds or spirit. However, I can actually feel, you know, an evil around the aura of either a possessed person or someone that is truly in love with evil is palpable as like bad BO. To me, anyway. I mean, you could just, it's senses. Wait, what sense did you sense it with? Well, none of the five senses that you completely rely on. There are other senses than the five senses. The Greeks and the Indians talked about that at great length. Anyway, the goals of demons are, number one, is to destroy beauty and innocence. They are in love to destroy same. They feed off the turmoil of your struggles, and this is where we get back to spiritual permeability, that they help to create for you. Demons are like the people that, have you heard of this before? Someone is a firefighter, and then they'll start a fire, and then they'll get all worked up. Demons are like the people that start wildfires, and they put on their firefighter outfit. And there have been many, many examples of that through the years. It turns out that so-and-so blaze was started by firefighter Bob. That's not funny, but demons also too crave attention and validation. When you actually give any of your essence, it's like the surfers. You're generating when you give it attention, you're generating the waves of your spirit, which are pure in most instances, that it uses to feed on. I mean, it is the food. When you talk about the food of the gods, aletheia, wisdom, well, the food of demons is your attention and your spiritual permeability. When you have spiritual permeability, you're like that giant cask of high-octane liquid refreshment. You know, that's leaking out like, oh, great, look at that. I got him to leak the good stuff. You know, the good stuff is leaking out of that aging barrel full of potato squeezings. They're feeding off of it. Humorous analogy, but very accurate. So they do crave attention. They love to heap upon themselves power, but I mean, I can create more heat inside my cabin by heaping the stove full of a lot of logs of wood, but it's eventually going to burn out in the middle of the night. You got to keep heaping it, chop more wood, or pay for more wood, keep heaping it more and more and more. It just becomes, and you just go worn out, and it just self-extinguishes, as it must, because it is against natural order. There's two types of power, once again. There's the power of rest, which can be fulfilled. This is the reason why the ancient Pali word talks about two different types of desire, wholesome and unwholesome, kusala and akusala. You know, one can be fulfilled. The others, which is all the rest of them, can never, ever, ever be fulfilled. In their evil minds, they actually think they're doing the right thing, showing the fragility of all things which are beautiful. But beauty is never in the thing, it's in the logos. Demons have no clue what the logos is. They see illumination because nobody sees light, they see illumination in their ignorance. They have no clue what the logos is, and they make fun of it, and they try to destroy it. And in many cases they do, but they've only destroyed the form. You know, I could crumple this up in a matter of seconds, it's so fragile. Look, all the beauty's gone out of it. It's like, yeah, but that logos of beauty and the divine is not in the thing. It is only an imprint, like a wax seal. The absolutist delusion is that they will see the water, for example, analogously, of the pure person and the water of the evil sentient being, whether they be alive or not. Most of them are not alive. So, well, you know, that vortex is water too, and therefore it is kindred. No, it's not. You avoid it. You shun it. It either gets destroyed or you ignore it. You know, as that old saying goes, little ones should be seen but not heard. Let it destroy itself. You can't appease it. You can't retrain it. You can't. People that are ignorant and have pure hearts, they try to do that, and they always fail. People also, too, say, why does God, not that the Absolute is sentient, why does God allow evil in the world? Well, evil is never allowed from the absolutist position. It's either destroyed or it is always self-destroyed. And everything works this way in cycles. Right now we're in a cycle of evil. There's a lot of evil going on in the world. I mean, a lot. It's going to get a lot worse, too. Evil always feeds off of the good, but it mocks the existence of the good, and it mocks the logos and thinking it's destroyed the logos. It's like me stupidly thinking I've done something or slandered, you know, the beautiful signal by smashing up the radio.
Frequency mode.
West wind up to 10.
I can smash this radio to a million pieces, and the demon in its ignorance will think it has done something. Oh, look at that. It's nothing but a pile of junk anyway. Where's the signal now? Well, the signal was never in the radio. The beautiful was not in that which we declare. Look at the beauty. Look at it. I destroyed it. Look at that. And demons always do this. They hate and destroy what is beautiful and innocent and pure. But they themselves are always self-destroyed. They always, always are. They think they're mocking God. What they're actually doing is mocking the demiurge, or the Euristos Dias. We can call it the Logos. All of these refer to the exact same thing. They're not mocking the divine. To mock the ephemeral nature of illumination, which has a transverse footprint of frequency and wavelength, is not to mock or slander light itself, i.e. the transcendent absolute. God, I don't care what word you use, couldn't care less about religions at all. To evil things, the logos is the stamped seal impressed in matter. It's not the seal. And the seal is seen, because nobody sees light, they see illumination. The seal is seen in an impression which is so easy to destroy is not it. But evil in its ignorance, and of course nobody can deny that that which is a demon or loves power, outward power of any variety, is ignorant. Is that it will either be destroyed or it will self-destruct. It must. The cycles, so not that I'm referring to or, you know, giving praise to, you know, your idea of God, but why does God allow evil in the world? Well, the divine or the absolute never allows it. It's always an ephemeral blip on the radar screen across the epoch of eternity. Always has been, always will be. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't rebel against the same, so. Evil is actually hyper-rational and hyper-logical. Anybody that seeks power outwardly is definitionally evil and on the cusp of being a demon, either in this life or the next. And they should be seen for what they are. It's like, I'm sorry you're so ignorant and evil. I shun you. Yeah? Now, the Mennonites and the Amish are really good at doing that. They shun you. And that really, not that I am any lover of the Amish faith in any way, shape, or form, but the idea of shunning evil is something that should be brought back. And it doesn't mean you're biased. It's like, I understand what you inherently are, but since you praise evil, You know, life is short. You know, to me, you don't exist, which is no different than saying I shun you. Anyway, I hope you like these videos. If you do, any donations always warmly welcome. I hope you have a lovely weekend in this case. Lux